According to the Washington Post, Trump's crusade against wind power is throwing an industry into turmoil. The president's actions to stop work offshore energy projects in New England and Maryland threaten higher bills and power shortages. Energy Secretary Chris Wright returns to our program this morning. Mr. Secretary, good to see you back again. Would you please respond to the Washington Post article and answer the question, will the president's approach to wind lead to higher costs?
No. The problem with wind is the wind doesn't always blow. You know, when your child is delivered prematurely and placed in an incubator, that incubator has to run 24/7 no matter what. So if the wind is blowing, well, you can say it's powered by wind power. Then the wind stops or the wind gets weaker. Something has to fill that gap and always be there. So when you add wind and solar onto a grid, you don't remove the need for coal plants, for nuclear plants, for natural gas plants that work all the time. You just make those plants turn up and turn down all the time. You end up having to maintain two grids. One for when the wind blows or when the sun shines, and one that makes sure everyone's alive and the systems work and you have a functioning society. So to maintain two grids instead of one grid is always more expensive.
Am I right in saying, Mr. Secretary, that with this administration, wind projects do not survive if they rely on heavy taxpayer subsidies? If you need a great big subsidy for a wind project, the wind project dies. Is that an accurate statement of where you're coming from?
No, look, the subsidies are going to end, right? That's agreed in the One Big Beautiful Bill, so they're going to phase out. Unfortunately, there's still tens of billions of dollars of subsidies that'll be paid over the coming years for projects that are already in that queue. The Trump administration is, how do we lower the price of electricity for Americans? How do we allow our country to reindustrialize and grow again? And how do we be reasonable in environmental protections? You hear Lee Zeldin say all the time, we want clean water, clean air, and better environment for our people. But let's get the bureaucracy out of the way. The problem of wind turbines, particularly offshore wind turbines, is their environmental impacts are pretty massive. You know, they're out there in these critical fisheries, these breeding grounds for whales. Fishermen and local people who live near these projects do not like them. Those people were ignored and shut out of the conversation before. This president's listening to those people. He's trying to balance those concerns. Let's not pretend the environmental impacts of wind aren't huge. They're huge.
Mr. Secretary, this year's Labor Day, gas prices, they're going to be at the lowest level in years, I believe it is. OK, gas prices down. You're going to tell me that we're producing more energy in America, and that's why gas prices are down. Have I got it right?
You nailed it, Stuart. You nailed it. And again, that President Trump campaigned on that, right? I want Americans to pay less, and I want them to have more job opportunities. Kind of hard to be opposed to that. But he's actually pursued policies and messaging to deliver just that. Produce more energy in America, you get lower prices, you get more jobs. That's our platform.
Just to end it, if Biden's energy policy was still in place, what would America's energy picture look like, do you think?
Just increasing amounts of blackouts, rolling brownouts. Yeah, as I mentioned in the cabinet meeting yesterday, they were closing more than 4 times as much firm, reliable power as they planned to build. They were going to shrink our capacity to generate electricity at the start of the AI boom where we need more electricity. So if you love blackouts, you love brownouts, and you want your electricity to be more expensive, it's a bummer that Harris didn't win to continue the Biden policies. If you want more jobs and lower costs, well, that's what President Trump's here to deliver.
It's a bummer. All right. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We admire your humor. We'll see you again real soon.